Good evening, Lincoln County community members. We are very excited to be with you here again this evening. This is the final presentation of our series that we have been conducting over the month of May and June. Tonight, we will be featuring our Siletz Valley Fire Rural Protection District, and we will have, I believe, Assistant Chief B.J. Warwark will be joining us tonight, and also our friends from Oregon Department of Forestry, Matt Thomas. So to get us started here, so I want to talk a little bit about the types of presentations that we have been doing. In prior years, when we could be with you in person, we had a 2-hour presentation that we provided sort of A to Z of everything with wildfire readiness. But with COVID conditions and not really being able to be with you in person, we chose to make our presentation into 6 individual modules. And actually, I think it worked out for the best because you can then select what you have the most interest in or where you might need to brush up on your information. And from there, you'll be able to pick and choose those different presentations for you. So if you go to our county website where you probably found this information, you'll see that you can attend tonight as an attendee and you'll be able to drop questions in the chat box. You may be watching on our Sheriff's YouTube live channel. You could do that. And if you have any questions, just email us and we'll try and get those answered for you right away. Or you may actually be watching this presentation at a later time. Also, the presentation slides are a separate document that you could review. And what we want to let you know is anywhere in the document where you actually see graphics, you can click on those graphics and it will take you to the real information or the live information on its home website, and it'll be easy for you to see. Some of the slides in the video when you're watching at home or even on the presentation slides, they're kind of small because it's hard to get all of the information in there. So when you're there, you can't quite see it, but when you bring up the presentation slide and you click on it, it will take you right to that location and you will be able to see it. Okay, so first what we're going to do is watch our public service announcement. Our public information officers for the county put together this great presentation. It was sponsored by your Lincoln County Fire Defense Board, Chief Robert Murphy from Newport Fire and Chief Rob Dahlman from North Lincoln Fire. So Chief Robert Murphy had been our Fire Defense Board Chief. They serve a 3-year term. And now Chief Brian Daniels from Depot Bay Fire will serve as your primary chief for the Fire Defense Board. And then also in the video is your Lincoln County Sheriff, Curtis Landers. So give me just a second here and I'm going to pull this over for us.
Wildfire can and does happen here, and we all need to prepare for it. And that's probably the biggest thing to the public is be aware. Be aware, be prepared, know what happens around you, know what happens in the community, listen to local radio, local media, sign up for Lincoln Alerts so that you have the most time, the best chance of getting early notification if we need to evacuate. I think something the general public, unless they've been through this, never really fully appreciates is how fast it spreads and how it can go from nothing to a firefighter or a sheriff's deputy knocking on your door saying, "Get out now." Sometimes, while we have a great system and we have the ready, set, go, sometimes it goes straight to go. I mean, that's just the reality because of how fast these fires spread. And so the time to start thinking about what do I do in a wildfire isn't when somebody's knocking on your door. That's probably the biggest lesson, I think. The time to start thinking about it, to start planning with your family, to know what you're going to do is really now. And that's why we're doing these messages, because we want people to think about this now, because in August, in September, you should already know what you're going to do.
Yeah, Lincoln Alert should be very much a priority in what they're preparing for their plans. It's a direct communication. We heard a lot of things. Communication wasn't good or wasn't acceptable during this last event, and we know that Lincoln Alerts is one of the things that continued to work and was providing information, timely information, to all the residents in the area. And one of the things that residents can do is make sure that their Lincoln Alerts is up to date, that they have their phone numbers in properly, that their cell phones are in there. If you want to know about a neighbor or family member around, you can put their address in, and there's lots of tools and things you can do to be alerted in the event of not just a wildfire, but any event, any emergency event that goes on. It's an excellent tool, and that's one of the first priorities citizens should do is have that all up to date.
So your personal preparedness is have a plan of what to do if you have to evacuate. And that's going to be applied not just to fire season, but also if we have other natural disasters that come on. Pay attention to what's going on, know when those alerts come out, be part of and subscribe to the Lincoln Alert system, and make sure that you have, if you were to walk into your house and say, I've got 5 minutes to grab my most essential items, what would I take? What would be important? If you're at a level 1 or a level 2 evacuation for a wildland fire, have those things already gathered up and in your car. Have your birth certificates, your important documents, your computers, anything that you say, I can't live without this. Have that stuff at the door ready to go or in your car ready to go.
I'm just really proud to be part of this community and part of the response that goes into it between the county, between the cities, the different fire districts. It goes all hand in hand, and it's a very collaborative approach to these disasters. And it's also because of, we're prepared well. Jenny Demaris, our county emergency manager, prepares us every year, prepares the community as we're doing here with information, but it's working together. That's the only way that we'll succeed, and we do very well at it.
Visit Lincoln County's website to view the 2021 Wildfire Readiness presentation schedule. These are live events that you can attend via Zoom and ask questions, or you can watch them live streamed on YouTube. There are 6 subject matter areas and 1 event per each fire district. So if you can't make it in person, rest assured we will archive these online for you to review. When you get to the website, just use the search tool or look for the text that says Wildfire Readiness Presentations. Thank you.
Okay, again, thank you for that public service announcement, and we'll move on. So for section overview, I have a little bit of an administrative brief and talk about who our sponsors are. Our seasonal outlook and both weather and drought conditions. Local fire district department briefing will be provided by BJ Warwark from the Siletz Valley Rural Fire Protection District. He's going to talk a little bit about burning restrictions, understanding wildfire weather warnings, what to do if, how to reach us calling 911, and wildfire be ready tips. And then we're going to talk with Oregon Department of Forestry regulated use restrictions. I have lots of additional resources to help you with your planning efforts, and then have plenty of time to answer any questions that you may have. I'd also like to let you know that our Siletz tribe, Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, they have representatives with us this evening as they are part of that Siletz Valley community. So our administrative brief. So who are our wildfire advocates? Well, generally, emergencies start with a call to our 911 dispatch centers, fire, EMS, and ambulance, and then dispatch to the scene to help those that are affected by the emergency. Sometimes individuals are taken to our 2 area local hospitals, which are Samaritan Pacific Communities and Samaritan North Lincoln Hospital. Your public works and utility service providers and road departments then help put everything back together the way it was before the emergency occurred. Our public health friends help us with communicable disease outbreaks, just like we've been doing for the past year with COVID, behavioral health, and also environmental health concerns. Your elected officials are very important as they ensure that needed resources from state and federal assets are made available to these first responders and other community cooperators. Your city, county, and tribal emergency operations centers then work with each of these agencies during response and recovery and ensure that public information needs are met. So our community presentation sponsors are the Lincoln County Fire Defense Board, which is made up of each of our fire districts, and your Oregon Department of Forestry. Other cooperator partners are Lincoln County Public Health, the American Red Cross, Oregon State University Extension Service, Oregon Coast Community College, their Small Business Administration, and then the Oregon Department of Financial Regulation, their Consumer and Business Services Department. And lastly, your Lincoln County Sheriff's Office. So our objective for tonight, why are we doing these presentations? Well, if you've attended one of our Cascadia presentations, then you'll know that this objective is very familiar. What our goal really is for all hazards, and specifically for this season, wildfire, is to strengthen your knowledge of our local wildfire risk and your role in preparedness, response, and recovery. And also to let you know what our role is. So to get us started, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the seasonal outlook for both weather and drought and where you can find resources for the most up-to-date information. So Oregon Department of Forestry weather seasonal climate forecast. This was actually pretty new to me. When I started putting these presentations together, I had access to all kinds of resources. But after talking with Matt Thomas and Charlie from Oregon Department of Forestry, they shared with us that they actually have a 3-month climate forecast that they do throughout the year. So again, if you click here on the image when you have the presentation slides up, it will take you right to their webpage and you can look at the most current forecast video, or you can go back and look at prior ones. Also, our friends at the National Weather Service, the Portland office, they provide each spring and winter season an outlook for us that we use for public safety, and we also make it available to you, the public. They provide a summer outlook, which really talks about what their forecasting is, what they see coming, but they also take a look at last season and last year as a comparison. So again, click on that graphic and it'll take you right to that information. So drought conditions. This has been in our local news and media quite a bit lately. And even your Lincoln County commissioners just signed the drought declaration for Lincoln County on Monday of this week. So current status, we take an image of this graphic about every 2 to 3 weeks. And when I started the presentations for this week, I noticed that it had changed. So if you'll notice here for Lincoln County, we're actually in half and half, a moderate and severe drought, depending on where you're at in Lincoln County. This information is provided by the U.S. Drought. You can click on this map graphic and they update it about once a week or so if things change. So thinking about this year, yes, it's very dry. Our Oregon Department of Forestry, just last night when I was driving home, I noticed that many of our fir trees are already sort of turning brown, and they said that this is drought stress. So we're going to get Matt Thomas on in just a little bit, and he can talk to us more of that when he talks about public regulated use. Okay, so now I'd love to introduce to you the Siletz Valley Rural Fire Protection District, BJ Warwark. He's going to come on camera and unmute himself, and he's going to talk to you a little bit about his fire district, their volunteers, some of their operations, and then he'll get into the rest of this presentation slides. So BJ, when you're ready there, I see you're trying to unmute yourself. Great. Okay, just let me know when you're ready for me to advance to the next slide for you.
Okay, thanks, Jenny. As Jenny said, my name's BJ Warwark. I'm the Siletz Assistant Fire Chief. So our district is roughly 33 square miles, which it's pretty spread out. It's got a lot of residential, which downtown, and we also have very few commercial buildings, you know, gas station, the clinic, which is a pretty big building. And a lot of stuff, you know, on the outer areas of the district. So most of our stuff, we have to fight with tenders. So we have to take the water to the fire. So that's why it's really important, especially this time of the year, that we don't want to be burning when we're not supposed to be burning. Because most of our hydrants are just in town. So that makes it tough for us to fight a house fire. We currently have about 14 members, and we're all volunteer. So anybody that feels like they'd like to do it, we meet on Wednesday nights at 7 o'clock. Come on down, we could use your help. So our district is, it goes to the north about Miller Road, and then it goes to the east. We go all the way out to Steer Creek, which is the 14-mile marker on Logston Road. And then to the south, which we butt up to the Toledo Rural Fire District, top of the passing lanes, which is the south end of Hudson Loop. So the main thing I want to say is definitely sign up for the Lincoln Alerts. I mean, it's very important. Like I said, we don't have paid staff, so we do have an administrative assistant. She's there Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 9 to 4. So unfortunately, we don't have people there 24/7. So that's why it's important to get that. And like Jenny said, learn the non-emergency numbers. Next slide. So currently, we are in a burn ban. We've been that way since June. Usually we go till July. We try to make it to the 5th of July is what we normally do, but it's been so dry that we had to do it in June. I mean, it's been so dry that we even had a red flag warning in April, which I don't think I ever remember seeing that before. So the way the dry conditions are, we really don't want to be lighting off the illegals. That's the easiest way to cause a wildfire. And a lot of our volunteers work out of town, and then we come back to town to where we live. So during the day, there's a lot of times when we're really, really thin. So if everybody does their part and doesn't do illegal burns or anything like that, then it makes it a little safer. Go ahead and next slide. Yeah, like I had said, right now it's a burn ban. Right now, about the only thing you can do is a warming fire or a small campfire. But remember, make it safe. We definitely don't want to just build a fire and then leave it. Always want to make sure you have a water source, a hose, bucket of water, something like that. We definitely want to make sure we have a shovel, and we definitely never leave it unattended, because that's how wildfires start. Go ahead and next slide. So what is fire weather? Fire weather is, like it says, typically late spring, rolls into summer, and then it goes into the later fall, or the early fall, excuse me. And that's going to be when we get that warmer weather, we get the east winds. Once that east wind kicks up, all the moisture and all the fuels that are out there, which would be the trees, the grass, and anything that'll burn up out in the wild. So once that moisture goes way down, we get the warm, hot east winds. And most of the time when we get those east winds, they're pretty good. So that really spreads the wildfire pretty fast. And then once again, the hot temperatures. Yeah, thank you. So a red flag warning. So that is something that's going to be happening within the next 12 to 24 hours. So that's basically telling us we have very high potential for very dangerous weather conditions. So while we're in that, we don't want to do any burning at all. If you go to the ODF, they actually will tell you, what you can and can't do. Once we get into those warnings, it may even come down to you can't even mow your grass. So keep an eye out. Definitely get Lincoln alerts. They'll let us know when that happens. A weather watch is more of something that could happen within 24 to 36 hours. The only difference is it's a little further out where the warning is. It's pretty close. Next slide. I kind of talked about some of this, but the warning is something that we seriously got to watch. These actually come out from the National Weather Service. That's where we'll get those red flag warnings. And the Weather Watch just is, we're keeping an eye on how the trend of what the weather's doing. We have a little time where the extreme fire behavior is more of what we would use for the firefighters, the wildland guys. And it's telling us that the conditions are really getting bad. So that's something more for us. The next slide. So the speed of wildfires. So so the main thing, you could take a look at that, which is, it's kind of interesting. But what you want to get out of this is the weather condition is one of the main causes. So the drier it is, the easier the stuff burns. The east winds, like I talked about, it dries out everything. It's a hot wind, dries everything out even more. And it also helps fuel that fire. If the winds get bad enough, it's almost like a blowtorch. It's just, it's kind of like your wood stove. You open the damper, give it a little air, kicks up the fire. Works the same way. Fuel types. So fuel types we would have here are the grasses. We have a lot of slash from the woods, and even in your backyard, if you have a lot of brush, blackberries, that kind of stuff around the house, those would be the main fuel types. So, and also your terrain will help affect it too. So the flatter it is, the slower it will go, unless it's wind driven, where if you have a slope heading up, the heat will actually preheat the stuff up above, and it actually will travel faster. They say that fire doesn't go downhill. It will go downhill. So don't believe that. Most fires in the forest will travel about six miles an hour, where in the grasses, they'll go 14. But like I said, if we have a good east wind, it can travel a lot faster. They saw that down in California, where I saw a video where they burned up an acre within less than 5 minutes. So what to do? So in case you cause a fire, definitely get a hold of somebody quick, because like I said, we're a small department. We're not always there. So at least we could get some people coming before it gets too big. So we definitely want to catch it while we're small. Definitely make sure that if it's safe, you could put it out yourself. So hopefully if you were burning when you weren't supposed to be, you at least had some water or a shovel. Just make sure that your exit is clear. You don't want to be, if your exit is not clear, you definitely don't want to be fighting it. And, if it looks like it's going to kick up, get a hold of your neighbors too. Let them know, so they can evacuate themselves. But you definitely don't want to be burning in the while you're doing this, because if you do start a fire and they find out it was you, you'll be on the hook for it. So I think they said the kid that started the Multnomah fires, after all was said and done, it started out at 36 million, but I think it's down to about 7 million that he has to pay. And for some people, you're going to be paying that off the rest of your life. Next slide. So if you see smoke off in the distance, as you can see, that's a pretty good plume of smoke. Definitely if it's that far away from you, more than likely, if it's this time of the year, it'll be a wildfire. If it's early spring, later fall, it's going to be a prescribed burn. So if you're worried about it, get a hold of ODF. They'll definitely tell you where they have their what areas they're burning. But definitely don't call 911 and tie them up. They have a non-emergency number you can. And like I said, we don't have anybody at our station all the time, so definitely learn the non-emergency numbers, because if we had somebody there, they could probably tell you, because the state forestry actually puts out all the burns they're going to do. So, but if this was during this summer and you saw a big plume of smoke like that, non-emergency. But if it was something coming towards you and it was an emergency, definitely call 911. Next slide, please. So here's the local districts. So if you look up north, you have North Lincoln. So they cover the north area. They actually come up Kernville Road, and we'll actually meet them about halfway. I think their district only goes up to about 4 mile marker, and we'll actually meet them about halfway. So if you live in that no man's area, then you may see us. To the south of them would be Depot Bay. And as you can see, they're pretty much just on the coast, where you have Newport, and they have their city fire. And then if you look out past, you see they kind of go out past their city district. They have a rural fire department. Below them is Seal Rock, and then below them is Central Coast, and then Yachats is at the very edge of our county. So going inland, you can kind of, about in the turquoise color there, you have Toledo City, and there's Toledo Rural Fire Department. And we butt up to their district a lot, so we actually do a lot of mutual aid calls between each other. So we're pretty good neighbors. And then you can see our district right here. Yeah, I don't have anything else, sorry.
That's just fine. So the last piece we'll talk here, Matt Thomas is going to come up after just a couple slides, and he'll talk more about this. So the lighter tan area is what is referred to as the unprotected area. So if you're like me and I live out in East County and I'm not in any of these structural fire protection districts, I'm in the unprotected district area, which means that I am dependent on those other districts if they have resources or capability to come assist and respond to that. But then I'll let Matt talk a little bit more about what Oregon Department of Forestry resources are. So we did talk a little bit about non-emergency numbers and how to reach them. So we have this resource. Yeah.
Could I kind of forgot something. I wrote a couple things down. Sorry
right
about
ahead.
that.
Yeah.
So a couple things I'd like to say is definitely, if you need some more information, like on your campfires and stuff, definitely go to keeporegongreen.org and go to the odforegon.gov. It has a lot of good information, and definitely, especially if you live away from our hydrants, definitely look at the Keep Oregon Green. They have a pretty good thing about, and I'm sure the ODF has it too, on defensible space. That I can say can save your house in case we have a wildfire, because I was on the Echo Mountain and there was houses that I saw that got burnt down, and then you'd see the next house over and it just went right past it, because they actually cut their grass, kept water on it, not any brush. So definitely look at that kind of stuff. Sorry.
No, that's fine. And you're actually giving me a precursor to the resources that we're going to talk about it in. So it ties in nicely.
Okay.
So, yep, great. So that was just all the individual districts that we have. Oh, let me go to the next slide here. Okay, so non-emergency numbers. We have this resource guide. I would really encourage you to bookmark it, take an image, keep it on your phone. Whichever of these areas you live and work in, make a contact in your mobile phone. So those phone numbers are already there. Just like BJ talked about, a non-emergency number for your Siletz community. You have police as Lincoln County Sheriff's Office, and then for fire, the Siletz Valley Rural Fire Protection District. So they have a non-emergency number of 541-574-5812 that goes directly to their dispatch, and then their regular number 541-444-2043. And you might wonder, why do they have a 574 number when Siletz is really 444? That's because all of the non-emergency numbers for those agencies that are supported by Willamette Valley Communication Center, which yes, it does happen to be in Salem, they are the ones that purchased all of the non-emergency numbers. So you'll notice there's a theme that they kind of go together. So all public safety agencies have a non-emergency number, and then the regular business number, and then of course 911. You'll also notice that we have Oregon Department of Forestry, Oregon Department of Transportation, Oregon State Police, and then your two ambulance service providers for the county, which is Pacific West Ambulance, which services your Siletz community, and then South Lincoln Ambulance, which focuses primarily on Yachats. Okay, and then also, when is it appropriate to call 911? We have community members ask us, I was nervous, I wasn't sure, is chest pain? Yep, definitely call 911. But what if I just slipped and fell? What if my mom needs a lift assist? This is a great guide that you can look on this. Again, print it, have it handy in case you're nervous, you're not quite sure. But if, really always err on the side of caution and call 911 to make sure that your medical needs or that emergency is taken care of. But again, just a great guide to help you sort of triage whether or not it's the right decision to call 911. And then here, Wildfire Be Ready tips, just like BJ talked about. We have presentations, which I'll talk about in a minute, but this is specifically focusing on making sure you know what to do if you get the call or a deputy or a fire official is knocking on your door. Thanks, BJ, for really calling out Lincoln Alerts. That's the fastest way to get notifications from public safety that there's an emergency in your community or neighborhood, whether it's a wildfire, an armed intruder event, a natural gas leak. If you're on the coast, of course, that could be a distant tsunami event. We want to make sure that each person in your household who has their own mobile phone should have their own profile. So I have a 17-year-old, I have a 12-year-old, and my grandma, who's 83. All three of them have their own mobile phone, and they each have their own profile in Lincoln Alert. So they can all be notified individually of each other because we're all doing different things, different activities. And then do a wellness check. Really, once a year, log into your Lincoln Alerts profile and make sure your information is up to date. Lots of folks have gotten rid of landline numbers or they've added them back. So that's another thing you want to check on your list. We also have new features in Lincoln Alerts. You can now subscribe to weather alerts of your choosing. If you don't want storm surge warnings, you don't have to get those. If you don't live near any of the rivers, then you don't have to get those notices. You can sort of pick and choose, and they'll come right to your phone. You can even put quiet time. So maybe you want to know about high wind warnings, but not at 3 o'clock in the morning. And you can just say, nope, I only want to be notified between these hours. So the graphic we have here during a wildfire, be ready, be set, go. The state of Oregon has adopted the same evacuation levels across the entire state. We refer to that as the Ready, Set, Go program. Bigfoot here has got a great graphic for us to really explain what those mean. A level 1, be ready, prepare, monitor, and pack your valuables. A level 2, be set to evacuate at a moment's notice. And a level 3, go, leave immediately. So Wildfire Be Ready tips. This is a great personal action guide. It has a home assessment like BJ talked about, that defensible space. Is your house, and are you ready for a wildfire? Are you ready to evacuate? It also has a place you can do important contact numbers, just kind of leads you through. It's about 5 or 6 pages long. It just really leads you through those steps. Early evacuation is the key for those with pets, animals, and access and functional needs households. What that really is saying, if you have, maybe you have a grandma at home that has some mobility issues, she doesn't drive anymore, you really need to be ready to evacuate at a level 2 versus a level 3. If you have livestock that you plan to evacuate or take with you, you're going to need to evacuate at that level 2 because it's going to take you longer to get everything loaded. Maybe you have to find transportation. If you need help at a level 1 or 2, you're going to call the Lincoln County call center, the 0621 number. Put that also in your profile, in your phone book, so you have that, and they're going to be the resources to help you get folks to help you evacuate. If you're at a level 3 and you don't have transportation, you have no other assistance, neighbors, friends, or family nearby, that's when you're going to call 911 for that immediate assistance. Always comply with local warnings about evacuations. Don't wait until the last minute to evacuate. And please don't underestimate how fast fire progresses. Just like in the public safety video and BJ talked about, fire does progress very quickly depending on those weather and fuel conditions. So now we're going to talk with Oregon Department of Forestry, Matt Thomas, who's one of our forestry representatives here for our Toledo district. And give me just a second when I bring him in. So hold on, here we go. Okay, Matt, if you are unmuted, let me see. I think you should be good to go. Do you want to give your microphone a test?
Yep, does that work, Jenny?
It does. Oh, yay, we did it. I'm sorry, I'm so super excited. So Matt, if you could also just talk a little bit about your agency, and we showed that graphic earlier about the unprotected areas, and what does that really mean for your unit when you do have a fire that starts? And I'll mute and take myself off camera.
All right, thanks, Jenny. Yeah, just a quick introduction. My name is Matt Thomas. I'm the unit forester for the Toledo unit of the West Oregon District, Oregon Department of Forestry. Our district is comprised of 3 different units. So the Toledo unit, the Philomath unit, and the Dallas unit. We cover all of Lincoln, Benton, Polk, a little bit of Yamhill, and a little bit of Tillamook counties for wildland fire. Specifically here in the Toledo unit, we cover the private lands as well as BLM lands in Lincoln County. So what that means is we've got wildland fire protection responsibilities for that area. We've got a crew of 8 seasonal firefighters, a crew supervisor, myself, and 2 foresters that we're able to utilize in our fire program as well. So like Jenny talked about in the previous slide that Assistant Chief Warwark was referencing, all that tan area is kind of referred to as the unprotected area, but it really is protected by Oregon Department of Forestry or our partners at the U.S. Forest Service, Siletz National Forest. So there is some sort of protection there, at least on the wildland side. We don't do structure protection, structure fires, but we do structure protection to try to keep fires from advancing onto structures in those areas. Our district also intermingles with all 8 fire districts here in Lincoln County as well. So there are areas where there is what we call dual jurisdiction. That's a little bit about our district. And I think we can go into the slides here for our public use restrictions. Assistant Chief Warwark also mentioned Oregon.gov as a good resource to go to kind of see what our fire restrictions are right now. Oregon.gov or the Oregon Department of Forestry website will have when you bring up our main website, it'll have a tab there for public use restrictions or public fire restrictions and industrial fire restrictions. I believe that previous slide that Jenny just had showed that. And yep, right there for public fire restrictions and industrial. So for things like campfires and chainsaw use, mowing your lawns, that's going to fall under the public use restrictions. Things like logging operations and more industrial activities is going to fall under the industrial side of things. So once you get into that, you can go and you can click anywhere. You can zoom in and you can click anywhere you want within that district. You can literally zoom in right to your house, and that will give you the most up-to-date restrictions for that area. So we go, the public use side of things is based off of low, moderate, high, and extreme. And as we progress through those restrictions kind of start to ramp up a little bit. And you'll see on that next slide, this is what we call our color chart. So it kind of goes through all those activities on the public use side, and when we're in low, moderate, high, and extreme, when and how those are allowed. So, for example, campfires, that's one of our main public use restriction, or, the ones that people ask about all the time. When we go into fire season, we also go into public use restrictions. Typically, we start out in low and then progress as the fire danger increases. So in low, campfires are allowed in all lands that are protected by Oregon Department of Forestry with landowner approval. And then as we progress through, so in moderate, they're restricted to designated areas only. So there's a list of some campgrounds and places that we've designated as designated locations. And then once we get into high and extreme, those start to ramp down even more. Currently, we are in high for the West Oregon District. So campfires are only allowed in those designated locations or with a regulated use or public use restriction waiver. So we do offer those waivers, but those do take a little bit of, it's an inspection process where our forest officers will come out and inspect the area, make sure it's fire safe. And also it's going to require that there's some water and fire tools and ability to put fire out as well. So there's some things that we do require with those waivers. And then once we get into extreme, we usually rescind those waivers and we're not having any fire. So big difference between campfires and debris burning. Campfires are your more regular, firewood, stuff that you'd want to cook a marshmallow or a hot dog on, where the debris fires are more of your backyard debris, limbs and sticks and stuff that kind of came down through the winter. It's a much bigger pile typically. I think that's it for public use restrictions, Jenny. On the industrial side, we have IFPL or industrial fire precaution levels, and those range from level 1 to level 4. And similar to the public use, as we ramp up in fire danger, those start to progress from 1 to 4 as well. Same on that same website, you can zoom in, down to basically your house or property. And once you click, it will give you the exact IFPL for that area and the requirements that are associated with those IFPLs. Next slide. I think that's you.
All right, thanks very much, Matt. Okay, so the next couple slides, we're really just going to talk about additional resources to help you with your planning efforts or building your skills up. So this next one talks about you as an individual, your family, your household. What can you do to either be more involved in your community or help build your survival skills? So first aid and CPR is always a very resourceful skill to have. Pardon me. At home, work, out in the community, an accident happens, an emergency happens, and you might be able to lend that sort of good Samaritan first aid to someone. Generally, classes can be available through some community volunteer groups. Your employer may be willing to offer it. There are some private individuals that will do that for a small fee. And if you join some of our public safety volunteer groups, then generally it's provided there as well. So thinking about the American Red Cross, they're always looking for volunteers. They do have a local contingency group here in Lincoln County. The two things that I would say most about the Red Cross of how they help us here in Lincoln County, first is talking about our local fire districts. If we have like an individual structure fire or perhaps an apartment building is damaged for some reason, the American Red Cross is contacted by that local fire agency, and they provide that initial sheltering service, perhaps some hygiene service, resources to the family or individuals, and even clothes or money or fuel cards to help get them by until they can contact their insurance agency or other friends, family, or community members can assist them with those initial recovery efforts. The American Red Cross is also the lead agency that we work with, that we use for sheltering for the community at large. They were able to assist us for the Echo Mountain fire, and they continued those sheltering operations across the whole state of Oregon all the way through until December December when the state picked up that responsibility through their Department of Human Services. Amateur radio, or ham radio operators as they're referred to. We have a Lincoln County Auxiliary Communications group. Right now we have about 74 strong. Strong mean we have the good workforce of volunteers. They do more than just catastrophic disaster events. During our Echo Mountain Fire, they provided assistance in the communications call center. They helped as manpower. You do have to have your basic technician course done first. Not a big deal. You can go to our website. We give you all these tips of how to do self-study, teach yourself. You can attend one of the classes when we're able to host those again in person. And then that information is on the website for them as well. Medical Reserve Corps is a new volunteer group for Lincoln County. It had started just about the beginning of 2020. And of course, with COVID and the need for medical volunteers to help with the vaccination clinics, that really did ramp up. And so now I just checked the numbers before I started this presentation tonight, and I think we're over 50 active Medical Reserve Corps members, which is fantastic. You don't necessarily have to be a practicing medical provider to be able to join the group. You could be a retiree but still have your credentials. You could be a retiree but you don't have an active license. There's a role for all individuals to be able to serve in that Medical Reserve Corps group. CERT chapters of Lincoln County, there are 4 of them: North Lincoln Fire District, Depot Bay Fire District, Newport Fire Department, and South County. All 3 fire districts together have a combined South County CERT chapter. So what do? They're really about neighbor helping neighbor, and then they augment public safety operations or local government to be able to assist. You might have seen them when we did the face covering distribution for the public health during COVID of last year. They also helped with Echo Mountain Fire, and then for their respective fire departments, they do a lot of assistance or research or outreach for their districts. Right now, we don't have one in East County, always looking for opportunities to start one. So if you live in East County, you can still join one of the other CERT teams. You can take the training. It's for free. It's a nationally provided program, because all the skills that you would learn in those CERT basic courses, you can use at home, in your own neighborhood, or pretty much, wherever you're at. So all of the information for those volunteer groups are available on our Lincoln County Emergency Management website, and we'll get you to that information if you're interested in volunteering. So map your neighborhood. This is really about neighbors getting to know each other, being engaged, finding out what resources or vulnerabilities you may have in your neighborhood. And I know most of the Siletz area, other than the city, your neighbors might be a quarter mile down the road. Not to worry. You don't have to be, in a subdivision per se to be able to map your neighborhood. And also in that rural area, Oregon Department of Forestry also sponsors the FireWise community. So that's another way that you can engage about looking at your community as a whole and increasing your defensible space around your properties, neighbors' properties, businesses. So all of those things tie in together, and they're all linked there on our County Emergency Management website. So some other resources, we've talked a lot about Lincoln Alerts. You can go there. That wellness check document that I talked about, it's in there. We really encourage you to also include your email so we can send you outreach information when we do local updates. But also too, if you find yourself in emergency response and moving into a recovery, if your email is in there, then we're able to send you additional information such as how you reach FEMA, how you contact the Red Cross, where you can go for donation centers, either to donate items, or if you are a survivor from a disaster, where you can access those resources. Our seasonal wildfire readiness information page, which is probably where you found this information for tonight, sort of a new page, Active Wildfires Lincoln County. We did have this page last year, but we all agree for our after action from Echo Mountain Fire, it was kind of buried and hard to find. So now in our county emergency management page, it's at the very top for that seasonal information. And our public information officers, when we do have an active wildfire that requires the evacuation of community members, it will be pushed out to the front page of the county's website, so it's easy to find. It will list all of that information about the situational assessment, what's going on, evacuation levels, where shelters are, if donations are needed, where you can volunteer. All of that information will be listed there. The current current conditions page, I really recommend that you bookmark this again in your mobile device, your desktop computer at home. All of the live data that we have available to us is then connected to that website. So National Weather Service for flooding events, current weather conditions, even the tides are listed there. We also have from the USGS for recent earthquakes in our surrounding area, or you can look at anywhere on the US map. And then also tsunami events from NOAA. I actually, during this presentation, I got a notification from NOAA about an earthquake, but no tsunami up in the Alaska area that could have affected us. Click on that. You could bookmark those things that you have the most interest in. At the top of that page, they're in order by those items that people look for the most, like floods, weather conditions, and then down lower in the page, they're all listed alphabetical. The when to call 911 and public safety contact information that we spoke about. And then lastly, what we want to make sure everyone is aware of, we have done those 6 presentation modules that I talked about. The first one was about your financial readiness and then business preparedness. We talked about the liability if you do something, whether it's negligent or unintentional, that liability factor, will your homeowner's insurance really cover that? What if you're a renter? Each of these presentations are under an hour and they're really worth your time. Animal preparedness, Laura Ireland from our animal shelter, she provided a presentation about pre-event, how to get your animals ready at home, how you're going to evacuate with them, and then thinking about those recovery efforts. Property protection by understanding wildfire risk. So Oregon Department of Forestry provided the bulk of that presentation with Oregon State University Extension Office. That was really about understanding our local wildfire risk, our history, and then useful information about defensible space from right up close to your house, farther out, even about, your trees, how high up you should limb them. So again, really worth the time to look at those. Emergency notifications and evacuations, that was myself talking about not just Lincoln alerts, but all the resources we have available for notifications. What to do as a member of the public when someone knocks on your door or you get the call to evacuate, and leading you through those steps of what to expect. And then next we had Mike Johnson from the American Red Cross and me doing a presentation about sheltering with the Red Cross, what to expect, how do you find them, what you should bring, what services are they going to provide for you, and then the medically fragile persons in our community that may need sheltering but can't be at a Red Cross shelter, but perhaps their medical needs aren't severe enough that they need to be at one of our local area hospitals. And then of course our Medical Reserve Corps group are the ones that would help staff that with our public health team. And then lastly, we talked about air quality considerations. How do you get the information? Where are the monitoring? What can I do to protect myself when we do have smoky conditions? We even talked about how to protect your pets. And then the last one was access and functional needs persons preparedness. So community members that have mobility issues, perhaps sight or hearing, or they may have cognitive disabilities, all of those nuances that you really need to take extra time and attention for their planning efforts. And then how do they evacuate? What steps, what other resources, what equipment should they bring? What about their caregivers? How do they reach them if they've been evacuated? All of those special things that they have to take in consideration for their planning efforts. So other resources, just like BJ talked about, the state of Oregon, there's the Keep Oregon Green. Oregon State University had Wildfire Wednesday videos. Really encourage you to look on their website. They had been doing videos, I think, through the most of the month of May and June, all different types of subject matters. Again, all this information is here to help you if you're interested. Oregon State Fire Marshal's Office, Oregon Department of Forestry, Oregon Health Authority, Office of Oregon Emergency Management. And yep, I did list the state of California because they've got a lot of history with wildfires and that community outreach and public information. So they've got a lot of good resources there. Ready.gov is a great place for sort of that all hazards, both businesses, individuals, seniors, everyone. There's something there for everyone. The National Fire Protection Agency, the sponsors of that FireWise community that I talked about, Wildfire Community Preparedness Day, the Ready, Set, Go program, and the American Red Cross. Okay, wow, that was a lot. So I'm going to check the chat here. Looks like we might have a question this evening. Yes, and thanks for the reminder. Matt Thomas is going to talk a little bit about fireworks since 4th of July is just around the corner. So Matt, you want to touch on that?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. I just wanted to touch real quick on fireworks and kind of where we are with Oregon Department of Forestry and our partners with U.S. Forest Service, Siletz National Forest. I know there's a lot in the news right now about banning of fireworks in different municipal areas, and I think Waldport has already got some stuff out for our local area. But in reality, if you look at those public use restrictions, all lands currently that are protected by Oregon Department of Forestry, or U.S. Forest Service, there's not fireworks allowed already. So that covers a lot of our rural area in the county. So I just wanted to point that out, and maybe ease some folks' mind a little bit about the dangers of fireworks and the potential there for fire starts. So as of right now, all lands protected by Oregon Department of Forestry in the West Oregon District, fireworks are not allowed. And that's legal or illegal fireworks.
Great, a great reminder. And I don't have any other questions in the chat, but BJ, do you have any other final comments or anything you might like to add?
No, I think everybody did a good job covering everything.
Well, great. Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to hold out here for a few seconds to see if there were any other questions, and it doesn't look like there are. So I'd like to thank both of our guests, BJ from Siletz Valley Rural Fire Protection District and Matt Thomas from our Oregon Department of Forestry. And again, our tribal partners here, Lisa Norton and Michaela Puentes. Sorry if I got that pronunciation wrong. The new emergency management coordinator was also with us this evening to answer any questions that we may have. And lastly, if you do have any questions after you've reviewed this video, you can reach out to any of us. All of their contact information for their agency is on our county emergency management site, and they'd be very happy to answer any questions that you may have. So with that, we will conclude tonight's presentation, and thank you very much. It's been a great series over the last 8 weeks of doing these presentations 2 to 3 times a week. Whew, I think I'm ready for a vacation. So thanks everyone, and have a good night.